Bucky is able to be behind the scenes that way because it's in Shedeur's contract that he controls his own media. Why? Why would Shedeur want to control his own media? Because then I could paint my own narrative. And then I can in business, people understand how valuable your own platform is, especially because it builds and it grows over time. And in this situation, right? Him retaining full ownership of all his personal media content, that means he.
Hey, big guy. What's going on?
How you doing, bro?
Hey, look.
You doing all right?
We gotta let my brother have his way in the league.
I'm worried about your pop. So, how you doing?
There has been nothing but legal turbulence since Shedeur Sanders entered the NFL. And that chaos didn't start by accident. From the moment his name was called, league executives knew this wasn't going to be a standard rookie situation.
Why they hate Shedeur Sanders. This is what it's about, man. It's that the things that he's coming in negotiating have never been done before. They always want it, and they like it for players to stay in a position.
But with his boldest move yet, Sanders didn't just push boundaries, he detonated them. NFL owners are furious after reports surfaced that Sanders secured a $250 million contract outside the league, and the fallout has been immediate. On the surface, everything looked completely normal. Sanders signed his rookie deal with the Cleveland Browns on June 5, 2026, as the 144th overall pick in the 5th round. A 4-year contract worth $4.65 million. Nothing flashy, nothing suspicious. Exactly the kind of deal the league has processed thousands of times before.
Suing him for $100 million because of Shedeur Sanders falling to the 5th round of NFL draft, claiming emotional distress, trauma.
But buried deep in the fine print was something the NFL had never encountered. Something that changed everything. That detail was the prime equity clause, and it flipped the entire system upside down. Under this clause, Sanders receives a percentage of all revenue tied to his name, image, and likeness. Merchandise, sponsorships, promotions, digital content, everything.
Only have something if he could prove collusion.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah,
but not liking him isn't collusion.
Well,
that's not collusion. You have your right to not draft somebody.
This wasn't a standard endorsement setup. This was revenue sharing at the franchise level. Instead of functioning like a normal rookie, Sanders positioned himself as a business partner with the Browns. According to league insiders, his cut reportedly ranges between 5 and 6%, which is massive when you understand the scale involved. For comparison, Caleb Williams, the first overall pick, signed a $39.4 million deal with a $25.5 million signing bonus.
Cocky, arrogant, then they're going to start and play it. They're going to OJ Glove it, and it's going to turn into some whole different issue because a black, confident, arrogant kid that is not liked for no other reason but...
Sanders' base salary looks tiny next to that. Just $447,000 guaranteed, starting at $840,000 in 2025 and rising gradually to $1.2 million by 2028. Under normal circumstances, Cleveland could have released him after a year with almost zero consequences. But this clause changed everything. Here's where it gets wild. Sanders' rookie jersey sales alone reportedly reached $250 million. That means his commission payout totaled approximately $14 million, more than his entire 4-year base contract combined. Let that sink in. A 5th-round pick just out-earned most veteran quarterbacks in their first season, and he did it legally.
Run fast, you jump high, you say yes sir, no sir, and we'll tell you what you're allowed to have. You don't believe that? Go look at Jerry Jones and Micah Parsons. Right now, the negotiation that's going back and forth.
NFL owners are panicking because this move doesn't violate the salary cap. It's structured as an business income, not player wages, which keeps it compliant under the current NFL labor agreement. That technical distinction is driving executives crazy because it exposes a loophole they never anticipated being exploited at this level. And it doesn't stop there. Sanders didn't just cash checks, he secured total control over his media empire. Unlike most players who operate under strict team-imposed posting rules, Sanders retained full editorial authority over his Twitch, YouTube, Instagram, and digital platforms. The Browns still receive a percentage, but Sanders controls the narrative, the content, and the timing. Then came the move that truly shocked the league. Sanders granted his half-brother, D. Sanders Jr., permission to integrate a personal media team inside NFL operations. That means behind-the-scenes access typically locked behind league copyright restrictions. This wasn't theoretical, it was approved. The fact that NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell personally signed off on this arrangement shows just how unprecedented these negotiations were. This wasn't about endorsements anymore. This was a fundamental shift in player power, branding control, and financial leverage.
And is suing him for $100 million because of Shedeur Sanders' falling to the 5th round of NFL.
Shedeur Sanders didn't just negotiate a contract, he rewrote the playbook on how players can operate inside the NFL system. And the league knows it can't unsee what just happened. The financial twist doesn't stop at contracts. The tax game itself gets flipped by Shedeur Sanders' deal. Because his equity money is classified as business revenue, Sanders can legally write off expenses the same way a company does while still paying self-employment taxes. Yes, it's complex, and yes, it's intentional. This setup creates long-term financial leverage that a traditional NFL paycheck could never touch. And that's just scratching the surface. On top of that, Sanders walked into the league with an endorsement portfolio most veterans would envy. Deals with Beats by Dre, Gatorade, Mercedes-Benz, and Urban Outfitters were already locked in. Nike alone is reportedly valued between $5 and $10 million per year, and none of it stalled when he made the jump from college to the pros.
Shedeur's rookie jersey has reportedly hit $250 million in sales, earning him $14 million in commission, which far exceeds
his collegiate NIL valuation was already sitting around $6.5 million. You stack everything and the transition to NFL branding was seamless and endorsements. Sanders' first-year earnings could realistically land between $18 and $37 million. Let that register. A 5th-round pick may have just become the highest-paid rookie in NFL history, and draft position suddenly doesn't mean what it used to. This isn't about where your name is called anymore. It's about brand power. Sanders proved that cultural relevance, audience reach, and media influence can outweigh draft capital. We've seen versions of this before in global sports, image rights in soccer, royalty-based endorsements in basketball. But Sanders dragged that blueprint straight into the NFL.
Shedeur Sanders has the prime equity clause. The prime equity clause gives Sanders a percentage of all revenue generated from merchandise, sponsorships, and promotion tied to his name, image,
where it's never existed at this scale. Here's the part that stings the league the most. Sanders lost over $44 million in traditional compensation after sliding from a projected top 10 pick to 144th overall. Under normal logic, that would be devastating. But instead of accepting the loss, Sanders rerouted the system. And now there's a real chance he earns more in his first year than Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels combined. The NFL has never dealt with a transaction like this. A rookie's brand is now directly tied to team revenue and equity, and every player in the league is watching closely. Sanders didn't just secure compensation, he erased the wall between professional contracts and collegiate NIL economics. That blueprint is now public and owners hate it.
I think it would be hard to prove that part of it. It does. It is interesting though when you talk about Shedeur that when you look at the league's website and you're not on social, but this stuff, when he got drafted, it was pinned on.
Behind the scenes, his father, Deion Sanders, was deeply involved, helping guide negotiations that quietly altered the business landscape of professional sports. But let's be honest, this deal doesn't exist without one shocking twist. Sanders' freefall in the draft was the catalyst. He was widely projected as a top 10 pick, with some teams rumored to consider him as high as number 1. His final season at Colorado backed it up. 72.3% completion rate, nearly 4,100 yards, 37 touchdowns, and a 169.1 passer rating. The tape screamed franchise quarterback. Then it happened. One name after another was called, 143 times. Before Sanders finally came off the board, fans and insiders exploded. Rumors of quiet collusion and intentional stock damage started circulating immediately. Whether true or not, the perception stuck. As a result, Sanders signed a modest $4.65 million rookie deal, losing tens of millions compared to his projected value. His slide instantly joined the list of historic draft shocks, alongside names like Geno Smith and Brady Quinn. Except there was one major difference. Sanders entered the league with superstar expectations, confidence, and visibility, and that magnified everything. Critics labeled him arrogant. Others said the league didn't like how much control he wanted. And then the football critiques surfaced. Scouts pointed to concerns about deep ball consistency, holding the ball too long, taking 52 sacks in 2025, and transitioning from Colorado's spread offense to NFL-level complexity. Some critiques were football-related. Others felt louder than necessary. By the time draft season arrived, the narrative around Shedeur Sanders had already shifted, and not in his favor. Some evaluators dismissed him as nothing more than a system quarterback, a label that stuck fast and spread quickly. His performance at the 2026 NFL Combine didn't quiet the noise either. At 6'2", 215 pounds, with a 4.78 40-yard dash, the measurables were solid but not spectacular, and critics pounced immediately. But the real controversy didn't happen on the field. It happened behind closed doors. According to multiple reports, Sanders' interviews set off alarms with several front offices. General managers reportedly bristled at his desire for franchise-level authority, including influence over coaching hires, offensive systems, and long-term direction. To some executives, that confidence came off not as leadership, but as defiance. Words like overconfident started circulating. Then uncoachable entered the conversation. Once that label appears, it spreads fast inside NFL circles. Teams began questioning whether Sanders would buy into established systems or demand that organizations bend around him. Then came the family factor, and that only poured gasoline on the fire. Deion Sanders publicly stated that his son would not play for certain teams, especially franchises located in colder climates. While meant as protection, the comments landed poorly with league insiders. Prominent voices like Chris Carter and Kurt Warner openly criticized the situation, calling the family presence a potential distraction. Suddenly, drafting Shedeur Sanders wasn't just about football. It felt like signing up for 24/7's media scrutiny, non-stop debate, and constant power struggles. For risk-averse franchises, that perception alone was enough to step back. But the biggest controversy of all came next, the allegation of collusion. Claims began circulating that NFL teams worked together to intentionally suppress Sanders' draft stock. This wasn't fringe internet talk. It was echoed by respected figures across the football world. On the Robin and Rodney show, NFL legend Eric Dickerson dropped a bombshell. According to a source he trusted, the league allegedly advised teams not to draft Sanders. Dickerson claimed the NFL wanted to make an example out of him, treating the draft less like a talent evaluation and more like a corporate compliance exercise. The claims didn't stop there. Dickerson stated that the Cleveland Browns were told to keep their distance until receiving a quiet green light. According to a former MVP widely referenced in media discussions, several owners allegedly instructed teams to pass altogether. Then, Stephen A. Smith took it further on ESPN. He pointed directly to lingering resentment toward Deion Sanders, comparing the situation to collusion allegations involving Colin Kaepernick. Smith argued that private conversations and text messages between owners may have influenced collective decision-making. The situation escalated to the point where, in June 2026, a Colorado fan filed a $100 million lawsuit against the NFL, alleging collusion, racial discrimination, and antitrust violations. The lawsuit even sought access to a confidential 61-page arbitration report examining historical bias against black quarterbacks. Legal experts widely expect the case to be dismissed, but the fact that it exists at all shows how explosive these accusations became. This wasn't just about one player, it was about trust in the draft process itself. At the same time, critics pointed back to Sanders' own pre-draft demands as justification for teams backing off. He reportedly wanted significant influence over offensive design, a clear developmental path tailored to him, and protections regarding playing opportunities. Most controversial of all was the prime equity clause, which frightened ownership groups. Executives worried that granting those terms would open the floodgates. If Sanders got equity, control, and branding power, what stops every future rookie from demanding the same? To conservative front offices, that risk felt bigger than any upside. Some organizations viewed Sanders' expectations as excessive, likening it to a college prospect behaving like a confirmed #1 pick before taking a single NFL snap. Even teams intrigued by his talent reportedly hesitated, fearing precedent more than performance. And this is where everything becomes complicated. The NFL already carries scars from past conspiracy accusations, and Sanders' fall only reignited those fears. Whether driven by football concerns, personality clashes, or something deeper, the result was undeniable. Shedeur Sanders didn't just slide. He crashed through the draft board, landing in a place no one predicted. The conversation around collusion didn't start with Shedeur Sanders, and that history matters. Colin Kaepernick accused NFL owners of blackballing him back in 2017, and the league eventually reached a settlement once evidence suggested coordinated behavior behind the scenes. That case never fully went away. It just went quiet. And now, those same questions are resurfacing in a new form. More recently, Lamar Jackson's 2023 free agency reopened the debate. Teams across the league suddenly refused to offer a fully guaranteed contract to a former MVP quarterback. The standoff dragged on until Baltimore finally stepped in, but the hesitation spoke volumes. According to Sanders' camp, that situation reinforced a belief that the system still operates with unwritten rules that don't always apply equally. That's where the racial dimension adds even more gravity to this story. Critics argue that black quarterbacks have historically faced harsher scrutiny, narrower margins for error, and character-based evaluations that go far beyond football performance. Confidence is labeled arrogance. Leadership is framed as defiance. And ambition is treated as a threat rather than an asset. In Sanders' case, his audacious self-belief, combined with Deion Sanders' unapologetic media presence, may have triggered biases that go deeper than arm strength or footwork. Whether intentional or subconscious, the perception is that Sanders wasn't just evaluated. He was resisted. Still, not everyone buys the collusion narrative. Some league insiders insist teams simply made football decisions based on scheme fit, personality alignment, and risk tolerance. They argue that the NFL can't function if every controversial draft outcome is framed as conspiracy. And that argument carries weight too. But here's the unavoidable tension. If the league embraces the model Sanders created, it opens doors the NFL has never wanted to unlock: player equity, brand control, revenue sharing. That kind of power shift could permanently change how contracts are negotiated. Owners know that once precedent is set, it doesn't go back in the box. On the flip side, if the NFL aggressively pushes back, it risks positioning itself as an institution fighting modern athlete empowerment. Tradition versus evolution isn't a theoretical debate anymore. It's happening in real time. And the outcome won't just affect football. Every athlete in every league is watching closely. Because what happens next determines whether players are allowed to leverage their influence, or whether the system will quietly close ranks to preserve control. This isn't just about Shedeur Sanders. It's about power, perception, and who gets to rewrite the rules. Remember to subscribe, like, and share.